I was super blown away by him because he was such a hard hitter and he
Mhm.
was on time, you know, kept it in the pocket for as much as you can. I overplay like a motherfucker. I know this.
Matt, how's it going? Welcome to the Question and the Answers podcast.
Hello, Andy. I'm good. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, man. Thank you so much. It's been an interesting couple of weeks, but we're starting to see a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel with this whole crazy pandemic, with vaccinations happening and whatnot.
This is
So
true. This is true.
yeah, so life is kind of starting to feel a little bit better in that regard. So, Matt, this is Matt Kadi, who people may recognize him from the various bands that he's been in over the years, as well as the photography that he has been doing for, gosh, I mean, you've been doing photography now for what, a couple decades now?
Yeah, I started in high school, my junior year. So that would have been 1998. I don't know
Okay.
if it was first semester or second semester, so it could have been 99. I
Okay.
graduated in 2000, but yeah, around that time.
Yeah, but I mean, there are plenty of places where people may recognize your name, but let's go down the list. I mean, you've been in a number of bands over the years. Most recently, you've in a project called Holehog, which is based out of the
hmm
Sacramento area, kind of a
hmm
hardcore punk band. And then you're also in a band called Monster Squad, which is the band that you've been in the longest, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Since January of 97.
Okay. Yeah. And kind of like a street punk band. I'm sure that's
hmm
probably where most people recognize you from at this point. But then you've also been in Great Apes, which is Bay Area based band. Brian Moss was a guest recently. And then you also in Build Us Airplanes, who
hmm
I've worked with you with Sell the Heart Records on.
hmm
Very familiar with
hmm
that. And
hmm
then I think there's a few other projects that you've been involved with over the years, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I could give you the short list, or it's not too many more, but I had a band around 2001 called West at Seven, which was very much not in the punk. It was actually that was my second band from Monster Squad, and it was could not have been farther away from punk. But it was good because I mean, at that point in my life, I was getting back into the other music that I honestly got rid of as a result of getting into punk as a young kid. So, most of the shows we would play were all with like rock bands and like I guess Dredge is their closest easiest comparison. And we were lucky in school, got to play with them a few times, but those type of bands we were playing with. And it was funny because our first show in Vacaville, some young punk kids showed up because they had heard I was playing, and they came with an open mind. Wasn't their thing, but at least they showed up. That was really cool. So West of Seven, yeah, and actually Dave Goss, who is in Build Us Airplanes, and actually played guitar in Monster Squad for a very short time, was a guitar player in West at Seven, and that was kind of he and I's baby at the end of our senior year of high school. Like, we need to make a band that's like in that Radioheady rock dubs type of thing. And our friend Damien and Gustavo Martinez, who later played bass in Peligro Social, and does he's a tattoo artist in Oakland, as a Sleeping Ghost line. Anyway, I'll stop name dropping for my friends. But yeah, so West at Seven, Ann Ramsey was the predecessor to Build Us Airplanes. Jay from Monster Squad was also in Ann Ramsey. Then we have Build Us Airplanes. There's a short project with Eric Urbach and Megan from Punch / Super Unison called No Secrets, KNOW. We did an EP together. It was kind of like Eric's band, not like Eric's band, but those were his songs, and I believe Megan co-wrote too. I forget honestly, but that was different for me because I was kind of stepping into song structure that was already formed, which was cool. It was a new thing, and also Eric's a longtime friend. I became better friends with Megan as a result, so that was awesome. But I'm very much of like, I want to be there for the birth and the creation of a song, to be more like emotionally invested. But that was cool. I got to practice some different chops in that group and also play with different style of bands. That band kind of played with more hardcore bands. I guess in short, it was kind of a rocky Queens of the Stone Age ish thing, with Eric on vocals. And then that's kind of it. Yeah. Great Apes started around the same time Build Us Airplanes started to play less, but only because I moved from Vacaville to San Francisco. Great Apes happened by kind of accident. We can go into that if that's any of interest, how that happened. And then, yeah, we stopped playing just because people moved, you know?
Right.
I mean, it was a pipe dream to think, and I did think I could move to Sacramento. So Great Apes started in San Francisco. I moved to Oakland. Other folks moved. And then I moved to Sacramento in 2018. I was like, we could probably still practice like once a month, driving to secret studios. And just like reality comes in. It's like, dude, I'm not 20 anymore. I'm not down to drive. Well, I would love to say only 2 hours, but realistically, you know, much longer from Sacramento to San Francisco to play with them. So I will probably never call Great Apes a broken up band, because there's just no point of saying that. But ultimately, yeah, we had a last show, but you know, distance. So, and then Holehog, yeah, Holehog is the newest thing where I'm on the bass guitar for the first time, which is very interesting. Flexing new muscles that I didn't know. Well, I did know, I did play before. I'd never played bass in a band before. I played by myself. So
yeah, I wanted to ask you about your transition to playing bass with Holehog, because you'd been a drummer for so long in all these other bands. And I was curious, you know, with switching over to the bass, was that something that you did as a conscious effort, or was that more out of necessity?
Sure. Well, I was very lucky in that like my mom's household was the neighborhood practice spot way back in high school. There's another group called Dead End Generation who, you know, there was Monster Squad and Dead End Generation in Vacaville at that time. And we were the brother bands, whatever you want to call it. And so everyone practiced there. That being said, everyone's gear was also there. So I picked up the bass, picked up the guitar. Dave Goss taught me a lot of cool things back then. I mean, I still play the same, you know, 5 Ozzy and Metallica songs on guitar that Dave Goss taught me way back when. So I always had the desire to play bass or guitar in a band, but I didn't create the time, and I definitely didn't I think that's it. I just didn't create the time to put it out there to the world that, hey, like, I know I'm the drummer and like I will live and die on the hill of being a drummer. Like that's who I am. But at the end of the day, I still would like to call myself just a musician. So how Holehog thing happened was Jason, who also sings in a band called Decoy, we've known for a very long time, with Doug, who was in a bunch of bands. Brain Rash was one of them. He used to play bass in a band called Pipe Down, which is more of a hardcore band from way back. And funny, Monster Squad even played with them, Jesus, in 98, 99, Vacaville Skate Park benefit show. But by the time it got built, most of us didn't skate anymore or didn't feel so comfortable skateboarding. And then Bo plays drums, plays another band called Syndrome, probably others as well. Anyway, Jason had come over last, I'll just say 2019 Thanksgiving time, something like that, to kick it or something like that. Just him. And yeah, he said, yeah, I got a new thing going with, you know, 2 of the friends. I said, oh, that's cool. Let me show me a demo. And he happened to have just an iPhone recording of the first track on the LP, which is called Burden. And yeah, I was like, that's really good. And then he dropped the bomb of, we don't have a bass player yet. I think he said they had somebody in mind. I don't really recall. And I've known Jason for 15 or so years. And I was like, I'm not one to really like be like, hey, can I get in on that? Or I don't know, say strike that. It was odd of me to say, I think it was odd of me to say, I play bass. I would like to play bass in that. After he said they did not have a bass player, because I didn't know. He'd say, we just have a bass player. And then normally I feel like I would have been like, oh, well, dang, well, hope you find one. But dude, the song was so sick. I just like, I play bass. But in the back of my head, I was like, yeah, I do, but I haven't picked up my bass in 10 plus years. So, he's like, oh, I had no idea. I was like, oh yeah, I wouldn't expect you to know because I don't go around advertising that, but also I don't consider myself a bass player. I'm someone who can play the bass. But I didn't know what I was signing myself up for because Doug, our guitar player, is a bass player. He's a shredder. He really is. And he plays complicated riffs. And, so that was, late holiday season in 2019. They had already set a recording date for January 12th of 2020 to record the tape. And we all agreed, and myself, there was no convincing. I didn't play bass on that album. Doug played bass on that album. There's no way I was going to learn those songs in that time frame, short of a time frame, to play at his caliber. I mean, probably half of them, probably could have, but the couple, the other half, or like you would have been able to tell that I just repicked it back up, or maybe not. Who knows? But so that's how that happened. It was really cool. It was purely by accident. I'll be honest, I was super nervous to show up to that first practice. Like, definitely had to go get myself like a Red Bull beforehand to make sure I had the energy, because it's a different muscle, and like doing that, like galloping, picking, like a that's hard. It's hard. It was easy when I was 15, 16, playing in my bedroom, but at then 38 years old, it was keeping that like stride up was pretty difficult. The fingering part, I don't struggle with so much. It's really just the picking. So so it happened they happened to be a bass player, and I happened to really love the song he showed me. We're all old friends. The other two guys, when Jason told them, they were like, "Oh, cool, that sounds great. Let's give it a shot." And there you go. So
that's awesome. I mean, I love the idea of being able to join in another band, doing or playing an instrument or playing a part in that band that you're not as comfortable with, because I think it does like present a new challenge. And like it's not to say that like, there aren't already challenges with the instrument that you're already comfortable with, because every band is going to be different. I mean, mostly different, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Because even like, the bands that you've been in where you have been playing drums, like Monster Squad is very different than Great Apes, and Great Apes is very different than Build Us Airplanes, and and all around that triad, as well as now you have Holehog. I mean, stylistically, sonically, just completely different shades of punk, and I think that that's awesome that you've had that experience. And to your what you were talking about with you had you recorded half of the tracks, and then he recorded the other half. I mean, that's kind of like, go ahead.
He recorded all of them.
Oh, he recorded all of them. Okay.
I didn't play a lick on there. Yeah, I'm just saying. I probably could have. And it would have been okay. But the ones that were fancy, they're fancy, and let's just say I'm still working out some of those licks, those tasty licks.
Well, what I was going to say was like, I've been in bands where I've been in that position before too, where there might be a person who plays a certain role in the band, and whether or not because of like the circumstance of the riff, or like the chord arrangement, or like the speed, or like whatever. I mean, every once in a while there might need to be like, hey, I'm going to tag you in on this so that you can do this, for the recording,
Totally.
And that can be a very like tricky line to walk down, because some people like wear that as like this, like, kind of a hit at their pride almost, like ego. And I mean, out of curiosity, I mean, like, was that ever in question? I mean, with this?
No.
No.
I mean, I knew going in. I mean, let's just pretend Jason and I think it was around Thanksgiving time, recording this book for January 12th.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, sure, I could have spent every single day practicing in December up to that point, but it wasn't even didn't bother me one bit. I went to the recording session. I took photographs. Doug blasted out all the guitars, and then he plugged in, did all the bass, and it's what is best for the art, and that was that. That had been the drums, then you would have had a bummed out Matt, because I'd be like, motherfucker, seriously, man. Because I've heard that story. There was a band that had gotten signed, a Contra Costa County band in the early 2000s, and drummer is a friend, and he comes in, he's like, dude, came into the studio, someone else is sitting at the kit. He had already done his tracks.
Oh man.
No, this is rock, rock and roll, big label stuff.
I think I know who you're talking about. You don't have to name any names, but
so like, dude, that was a gut check, and that was a reality check, is what that was for me. I wasn't even in the band. I was just like, whoa, man, that's how that goes. He's like, that's how that goes. He's like, I didn't even know until I showed up.
I've definitely heard that story before too. I mean, I've heard of a number of bands that happened to, like even not major label bands, like even smaller, like, or like bigger indie label bands that have happened that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, it truly is what is the best thing for the, I hate calling it, I'm a product. I recall the first time I heard that and I was like, you're old, you suck. But I mean, at the end of the day, it really, it's art, but yes, it's a marketable art piece that you have, which technically makes it a product.
Right.
But that was such a reality check. But to go back to like when you were commenting on the different bands being different styles, I wanted to say too, like Monster Squad, Great Apes, Beatles, Airplanes, Holehog, all those things. I honestly, I would love to be able to put out a Swedish hardcore style EP, just flat, fast Mob 47, Fee-Fan type stuff, and DC hardcore style band. Just bust out these random EPs, just quick projects, nothing stressful. But I honestly never thought I would play in another like hardcore / punk band similar enough to Monster Squad. I thought that for a long time. So like being able to kind of luckily accidentally get into this Holehog thing and then to be on bass and like have a new dynamic has been super, super exciting for me. I'm way into it. And also touching back on the dynamics of band, it's like, I'm, like you said, like I've only been a drummer in a band. So now I'm stepping into someone else's shoes and I try to mind how I give advice to our drummer, Bo, who's a fucking time ninja. Like human metronome, super great drummer. And a couple of years ago at some other random show I was at in Sacramento at Casa de Chaos, his other band Syndrome was playing. And I definitely gave him like after the show, like, dude, you're so good. Like, oh my God, I'm so stoked to see a great punk drummer. And he might've been like, yeah, dude, who are you? Which is fine. But I was super blown away by him because he was such a hard hitter and he was on time, kept it in the pocket for as much as you can. I overplay like a motherfucker. I know this. I dialed it back. Just took me a long time. Anyway, so like when I'm in this dynamic room, this room of Holehog, and like this is these three guys' band, right? I mean, it's not, I don't feel that way, but when you're walking into it as a new bass player who's never played bass in a band, I try to be like mind boundaries as much as I can, but also I'm very much like, I love being a part of the process. I love giving feedback. I'm always going to suggest a little pause here and there or a grab, just to throw a dynamic in there. And you, just like being in any band, it's a new relationship. So you start to really learn how you cannot communicate with somebody, which is a whole nother process. I mean, Great Apes is a great example of that. I mean, Brian works super, super freaking fast. Like in the beginning, it was really hard for me. Like, how do you just, okay, cool, that's the verse. Okay, cool, that's the chorus. What? Monster Squad writes extremely slow. That's just how we operate. We do not crank out jams. The 10, 12 songs in an album, that's it. There's no B-sides floating around. It's nothing. I mean, back in high school, yeah, there was 40, 50 songs of, verse, chorus, verse called a day.
Right.
So anyway, and it's, yeah, so it's interesting to like when Great Apes was starting to write more and more, it's like, wow, we in I don't know, 5 years of a band, 6 years, I forget. Well, I guess it'd be about 8. But of releasing records, we put out the same amount of content as Monster Squad did in almost 20.
Right.
But also we're older and more, I hate using the word seasoned, but we're not our first rodeo kind of thing. So I guess I'm just talking about the interesting dynamic and how the different relationships play out. Every band is different, and how you talk to someone, it's helpful to be mindful. I've never been in a band where it's like, this is my band and I will never be in a band. I will never be in that band. No, thank you. I mean, unless if Jason Willer has to take a step aside and, Jello needs me, it's fine. I'll be there. I'll show up. Don't worry. But anyway, yeah.
Well,
I digress.
I can definitely relate to what you're talking about with respect to like the different bands, because I've been in I think grand total I think 10 bands in my lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
different groupings
Mm-hmm.
of people like within a different band dynamic. And you're totally right. I mean, every single one of them is different with the way that communication and writing happens, and the speed, velocity, like just like the way that you structure a song, and like who's going to take the lead, and like
Mm-hmm.
how many people are we going to allow to write a song, or do we only rely on one person as like the main songwriter. And I'd love for you to kind of chime in on this with your opinion, being somebody who's been a drummer for so long in a couple of different bands. I know that as somebody who's been a bass player in bands as well as a guitar player, and I've been a saxophone player as well. I've never been a drummer, but as somebody who was a bassist for a long time, I feel like there is like this kind of connection between bass players and drummers in particular, like with the way that they have to communicate with each other. And I I would be curious to know, like, how do you feel that translated to you switching from drums to bass? And like, do you think that that's like, I guess something that came like maybe more naturally to you, switching over in that regard, or do you feel like that's just not like a thing? Like,
I think no, I do think of course I think it's a thing. I mean, you can see it in the live shows of whatever bands who have that.
Mhm.
For the ones that come to mind right now, I mean, Fugazi, one of them,
Totally.
that connection. And this might be outside of some people's realms, but Mars Volta, 100%.
Oh,
And I almost saw them in a really small club, but then they canceled. But I've seen them quite a few times, and it's always just fucking staring at each other, doing that thing,
Mhm.
and it's so cool to see that. I mean, you might have less of that in like a hardcore punk band, but it still exists. I'm still trying to navigate that. Like, but I do find myself lately, as I'm getting more comfortable at practice, and we've never played a show, so that's another thing.
Right.
We should, actually, next week would have been our 1 year anniversary of our first show, album release show. But anyway, yes, I do believe that dynamic is 100% real. It should be real. If it's not, then I don't know. Maybe the band doesn't need it, or maybe the bass player and drummer need to like work on their relationship together. Because me and Justin in Monster Squad, the bass player, I definitely feel we have that relationship. There would be certain accents that he and I would do. It could just be like a gung. No one else is doing it, but he and I are doing it. And it always feels cool. It feels great when or you don't know, is he going to remember to do it this time?
Right.
Because it's not on the recording, but we do it for the live show.
Right.
Which is something quite a while ago in Monster Squad's time that we would, try to add a little live version, but keep it tasteful. Like, we're not Queen, like dragging out the extended, and we love Queen, just be clear about that. Extended version, right? With it, do the chorus 6 times because they really want to hear it. Like, no. Just tasteful little tidbits here and there. But with Holehog, yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure that out. Yeah, but I find myself leaning in more towards the kit lately and giving the look like this thing, much like I would with Monster Squad, because I know there's, certain cues that maybe get forgotten on a somewhat regular basis. And I do my best to always remember them 100% of the time. And I know everyone else does too. But there's always these things that like, the one transition, the one bridge that I'll just make it up, the singer or the guitar player have forgotten since day one. Mm-hmm. And the song could be fucking 10, 15 years old. And I'm still going to nod at you while we're playing at the live show. Like, it's coming now. Yeah. You should know by now, but it's fine that you don't. You're never going to remember because now it's just like stuck in, you're expecting to forget, so.
Yeah. I feel like historically, most, not all, but I'd say most of the bands that I've been in, drummers are typically very good at remembering. It all starts with the drummer. It all starts with the beat, and it has to start from there, and everything else is built on top of it. So I think that it's so important that drummers remember like the fine little small things, because that's kind of what makes songs sometimes. I mean, like for instance, you know, I've played with plenty of drummers who are very musically minded. Like they're not just like rhythm minded, they're like musically minded. So
Mm-hmm.
they, you know, talk about like Gabe in Tsunami Bomb, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Like he comes up with really great ideas for like the song, like the guitar or the drum parts or like the vocal parts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you know, I've had drummers in the past, like my buddy Terrence, like same idea. My friend Buddy back in the day, my friend Mac back in the day, like all these guys. Like I think that it's important to remember that the drummer is a musician. Like the drummer is not just playing the
Yeah.
beat. Like they
Mm-hmm.
add to the musicality and the musical quality of any song that's being put together. Um, I do think that there are a lot of bands that don't always do that successfully, at
Mm-hmm.
least consistently. Um, and I mean, it doesn't necessarily make them any worse or any better. I think that maybe I tend to be a little bit more, I gravitate more towards bands where I see that happening and I hear it. Like
Yeah.
those little things that happen that you can tell like the bassist and the drummer like really
Mm-hmm.
came up with. They're like, dude, we're gonna do this here. And we're only gonna do it once, but it's gonna happen once and it's gonna send everything off in like this new
Yeah.
direction, you know? Yeah.
I feel like it's something as simple as like, here's a great photograph, but it has no contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Boost the contrast a little bit, like darken the darks, lighten up the lights, sharpen it a little bit.
Sure.
That's kind of that relationship. And I mean, so the photograph itself would be the song, right? Great song, great photograph, but let's add some spoof on there, and that makes a huge difference. But yeah, totally
No,
agree.
I mean that's a great analogy, and actually that kind of leads me into the next part of what I wanted to talk to you about.
Oh,
So I mean,
don't
you've been a
call it a segue.
photographer. I'm sorry. We'll,
Don't call it a segue.
we'll call it a segue. Don't call it a segue. Um, so you've been an active photographer now for quite a long time. You said back
Yep.
in like the late '90s, and you know, so you actually have a pretty vast portfolio, and you've done a lot of really cool work. I mean, you work and have worked with like Winston Smith, who's famously done like a lot of work with like the alternative tentacles, and he's famous for like the
Mm-hmm.
Dead Kennedys logo and like a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of the artwork on like Dead Kennedys records, and
Mm-hmm.
not to mention other stuff as well.
Yeah.
But so you've done a lot of obviously like concert photography, but then you do other types of photography as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's, I guess depending on where I'm at in life will make me decide if I want to pursue it as like a source of income,
Hmm.
which I have done. I did it for a couple of years in San Francisco. Random. It's just you're freelancing. Yeah, and I'm not by any means saying I'm an expert freelancer. No way. I mean, I from headshots to photographing a rich person's art up on California Street in San Francisco, to driving down to SFO to photograph a like stone company who's having a private event for people who want to buy fancy countertops.
Hmm.
Like probably other weird stuff too, but it's always, I mean, it's an art for me, and much like drumming or playing in a band, it will always be a thing that I do no matter what, no matter if a paycheck is involved. I've done weddings, corporate headshots, show up to a business district in Santa Clara, set up your light, bam, bam, peace out, collect a paycheck, say bye. Okay, cool. Nothing gratifying. But at the end of the day, I had to remind myself, cool, that was really easy money. And it helped me pay for my next lens or whatever. Or if at the time I'm not working, which when I was freelancing, I forget if I had been laid off or if I quit whatever I was doing. It doesn't matter. I don't remember. But it was extremely rewarding to find out that I could pay my way through life with a piece of art. Then you also, or I, and I'm sure lots of folks do too, go into the battle of like, do I want my art to be my job? It's still a battle I have, because I'm confident in my abilities as a photographer, but I'm not confident in my desire to make it my day job. I mean, so that's that. Lost my train of thought.
That's okay. Well, I was about to ask you, like, I mean, what really got you into photography? I mean, was it something that was more born out of just like like a desire outside of the music world, or did this start as like doing show photography, you know, and then it kind of blossomed from that?
So the short version is I was always like the kid that walked around school with a sketchbook in his hand. You know, knock off puss head drawings. I literally have a full sketchbook of just Beavis and Butthead drawings from, I'm gonna guess, like 94, 95. Comic book drawings. You know, I grew up collecting comic books too. So sometime around my sophomore or junior year, you know, confidence was not at its highest. Let's just say that much. As a teenager, family stuff, punk happening, and realizing what it's like to be, except for your local circle, of course, that I was very lucky to have, be, you know, spit on by the rest of the little town you live in, you know, for looking the way you look. So without going too deep into that, I became, I'm not a good artist. It was my first, like, I'm a shitty drawer. I wasn't a shitty drawer. I was a great illustrator, and I think I still am. But 16-year-old Matt didn't know that, you know? So at the same time, I kind of I don't know if I made a choice to like put the pencil and pen down and stop drawing in my sketchbooks, which thankfully I still have. I didn't get rid of that stuff. I don't recall what showed me the camera. One of my best friends, Martin Steiner, he was, I think he had taken a photo class. I don't know. I'm just going to make up that he was the reason I said, yeah, sure, I'll take photo class. He was also one grade above me. Actually, no, we had photo class together. So that's not true. But anyway, I decided to take photo class my junior year. My great grandmother, Dorothy, let me have her Canon AE1, which was, oddly enough, the camera she used to photograph all of us with when I was a little kid, which I still have. And yeah, I took to it really quick. My photo teacher, Tom Ray, Mr. Ray, who we're still friends, which is awesome. He's just a blues guy who likes his rock and roll. And he saw, you know, the punk kid coming from the rock and roll world. We kind of broke down on Jimi Hendrix a little bit, you know. And I remember something he had said early on is, he was the first person to say that me and my friends have an interesting life. And then I should be documenting it. I wish I had documented it more than I did, though I did a pretty good, I think I could have done more, but that would have required more money, more film. Had no money, hence no more film. But I was the TA. I mean, I had him for like sometimes four periods a day. I mean, as much as I could be in that photo class, I was in that photo class. I would go straight to photo class from the previous class instead of waiting in the hall for your 7-minute, whatever it is, you know, so I could start developing. So by the time I sat at my desk, my film was already hanging up and you know, being developed. So because I wanted to get in there and start printing right away. And yeah, it was really powerful for him to say, like, you and your friends, you know, all you punk kids, basically, you look cool. It's basically what he was saying. You guys look interesting. You should document that. And I did, but also since it was just us, it just felt like this is normal. Right. Not a big deal. So yeah, I wish I had done more. But you know, you can't do anything about that. I can't go back in time and re-photograph us as teenagers.
Not yet, at least.
Yeah, no shit. But Mr. Ray, again, this really comes down to having that cool teacher, which if you want to go backwards, it was just how I got into punk from my junior high art teacher, who I'm still friends with. I mean, my junior high art teacher, Miss Brasher, who has a song on.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, my junior high art teacher, Miss Brasher, Wendy Brasher, I think track 3 on the last Great Apes album is called Saint Brasher. It's about teachers like her who like just take time to care and say, like, you know, whatever you're doing is really cool and you should do more of that. And then you go, wow, cool, I'm not a loner. And then it goes from there. But yeah, it started with shooting the friends and then the random couple Gilman shows that our friend Holly would drive us to, our singer Phil's then girlfriend from Monster Squad. We had 5 of us in a fucking Geo Metro.
Awesome.
Sometimes 6 from Vacaville to Berkeley. And there's a few shows I regret so hard not bringing my camera to. And it wasn't in my mind at that time, like to take your camera everywhere. Those kudos is one of those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my first show there, FYP. Actually, I don't know if I was shooting then, but I don't know. So anyway, yeah. So it started with the friend. It started with the supportive teacher. It started with the friends documenting us being, punks drinking 40s and stuff like that, and staging stupid photographs. Like we'd stage like a Mortal Kombat fight in like the living room. Like, oh, you're Johnny Cage. I'm Raiden. Let me take a picture of you doing an uppercut. Like, it's so dumb. But that picture is hilarious. I don't even know if that was the genesis of this specific photograph, but it's hilarious to look back on, because now the guy getting kicked in the face is a father of 3. His son's 19, and we're friends. And I'm trying to help him out with music.
Yeah.
Wherever I can. So that's where my love for photo started, was friends. Yeah. And Mr. Ray.
I think that's really awesome. And I mean, like, you speaking to the idea that you had this teacher that like really, just kind of inspired you. And I mean, that's so important. I mean, it's kind of like, it's like something out of like a weird, like John Hughes film, something like, like some weird cliche, like trope where it's just like, yeah, hey, Tommy, blah, blah, blah. Like, I got you. I'm the cool teacher. And it's like, a lot of people don't really ever experience that. Like, I have friends who say that, I mean, maybe they're just full of shit and they haven't really copped up to it. And maybe there was a teacher that actually inspired them. But I have friends who just like, oh yeah, dude, like I hated school. School was garbage. Fucking didn't get a single thing out of it. And I'm glad it's over. But like, I can speak to my own experience. Like I had several teachers that I thankfully was like, dude, this teacher is awesome. And I'm so glad that I had them and not like say a bunch of these other types of teachers that I'm just like, I didn't really learn anything from you, like,
yeah,
you didn't inspire me. I know that you were just kind of, I mean, like I give nothing but credit where credit's due to teachers. It's a hard fucking job, so it's not to knock anyone who's ever been a teacher or who is a teacher.
Sure.
But it's like those moments that can really make a huge impact in a kid's life are really valuable. And it doesn't have to be like this Kodak, or I'm sorry, Hallmark moment where it's just like, Matt, blah blah blah, like you should really document this stuff. Like it doesn't have to be like this weird inspiring sun beaming down you type of moment. It can be something as simple as like, yeah, man, like you guys has a cool thing going, like you should just take some photos,
Yep.
And like even something as casual as that can be like this big epic moment.
Oh yeah.
So that's great to recognize that. Yeah.
I have 2 other ones I wanted to bring up really, really quick while we're on the topic of teachers. So I was fortunate enough to live in Hawaii as a kid. We moved there for work purposes, military. And kindergarten, we had music class. I think her name was Miss Yamada. And I always grabbed the cymbals in music class. And she'd pointed out how cool that was. Awesome. Checkbox number 1. I grabbed the thing that, I don't know, I'll just try this. And I gravitated towards it. I had a set of bongos before that. Maybe that's why. And then in 3rd grade, Miss Lendio, she was teaching us how to dance, like the electric slide and the running man, the Roger Rabbit. And she was also teaching us a little bit of Spanish. And I forget if it was her, but maybe a little bit of Hawaiian also. But she was one of those first teachers to do the whole, like, kind of like pull you aside and pay a little bit extra attention to you, because you could tell that what she was showing me was really registering, and I was really stoked on it. And she's been a teacher that she's Miss Lendio and Miss Brasher, the junior high art teacher. They're very similar to me in their impact, even though Miss Lendio I haven't seen since 3rd grade. But it's just her story. The short version I just told just made such a huge impact on me. And we did find each other on the internet recently, and I like lost my shit just seeing someone who you have not seen in who knows how many years. And she's a photographer now.
Awesome.
So anyway, yeah, it's pretty damn cool. Yeah, inspiring cool. Teachers, man, they really go. Yeah. Another last one about teacher on the topic of teacher. So my senior year, we had a new government teacher named Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, I think he went to our high school in Vacaville, went to college, came back to his high school. He had a younger brother who was just a year older than me. So I'm like, oh, Paul's older brother, what's up? We became friends. We're still friends. one day he goes, "Hey, punk rock kid, you want to go to Gilman with me this weekend?" I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, there's a band you might like. They're called At the Drive, and they're pretty tight." I was like, "Nah, I haven't heard of them." I was like, "I've heard of them, but I was like, I've heard of them, but now I'm good. Like, I don't know who that is. I don't listen to them. Not because I legitimately hadn't heard them.
Right.
And at that point, I was probably like, I see those album covers. Nah, not my thing. I was only looking for like hardcore crust, D beat,
Right.
spiked studs, big ass boots at that point.
Not At the Drive.
And not At the Drive. However, I was like getting back into that stuff at that point. I was just like, nah, it's I think I was like, nah, it's cool, man. But he let me borrow Relationship of Command. I don't even know if it was out yet. It might have just come out, but he let me borrow In Casino out, I think that weekend before, and I come back to school on Monday and I was like, fuck, how was the show? Yeah, obviously it was really good.
Right.
And then they came through one more time. I didn't know about it. Next time they came through, and they broke up, and that was it. So anyway, yeah. Shout out to government teachers, Brian Davis, Vacaville High School. Solid dude.
Yeah, I think I've told the story before, but like I had a little story about At the Drive-In before they kind of blew up. They were supposed to play at this like all-day punk festival out in Manteca, California, and it was my freshman year in college. And I had never heard of them, didn't know the name. I was there to see like a bunch of other bands were playing, like Link 80 was playing, like the Blast Bandits played, like Sandwich Mafia played, Wet Nap played, a bunch of bands. Yeah, and At the Drive-In was supposed to be like the last band that played, and I got like a sticker from them, and like I think I introduced myself to like the whoever was running the merch. I think it was somebody from the band, but they had been on like this long tour, and I want to say that In Casino Out had come out, like they were still on Fearless at that point. The show kept getting pushed back and pushed back because bands were kind of like taking their time, and then eventually curfew hit, and At the Drive-In didn't play, and needless to say, they were pissed, and everyone else was just like, whatever, like, because I don't think anyone really knew who they were at that point. At least the people that I knew didn't know them. And then of course, like, like a year later or something like that, 2 years later, like you find out who they are, and you're like, aw. Like I could have seen them in like this like tiny little club in like Manteca, of all places.
That's really funny because it turns out they had played at Armio High School, which is in Fairfield.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Next to Vacaville.
Yeah.
And Vacaville, we would have lunchtime shows from time. Actually, I saw Dredge at my high school. Actually, it wasn't a lunchtime show. I should be correct. But they played a nighttime show at the high school on the stage. Blah 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 blah. This guy Tim Carson was setting up these shows, and something about the At the Drive-In show came up at Armio High School. An old friend of mine, she was like, "Oh yeah, I went there. Why weren't you there?" I'm like, I didn't know who they were back then, but damn, fucking A. But whatever. It is what it is.
I mean, I got to see him like years and years later.
Yeah,
when they did like their reunion, and like it was great. I mean, I totally
me too.
It was awesome.
I saw the Warfield shows. Yeah,
but I would have. I mean, dude, like when you look back at like that footage, you're just like, geez, dude, like, what a show that must have been.
And it's funny. So when Mars Volta had just come out, I was working at the Guitar Center in Concord for way too long. And I went to Tower or Rasputin's or whatever it was called at that time. I think it was Pat Libby working, or it might have been Keith from Punch. They both worked there, if I remember correctly. I walked in, I was like, "You guys have any Mars Volta?" And they're like, "How do you know about that band?" Because Tremulant had just come out.
Oh, okay.
So it was still like a little, like it was a secret.
Right.
How do you know about that band? Like, I don't know, because I got the Drive-In. So anyway, yeah.
That's killer. Well, I mean, speaking of Vacaville, so I mean, I know that you're a little famous for like having a little cameo in that Papa Roach video.
It is the Papa Roach video. Last Resort. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah. If anyone wants to do a little snooping, just check out what's why can't I think of the song?
Just
name?
Look up Last Resort. It's called
Last Resort. That's right. Yeah.
You will see my high school bedroom, the house.
That's right.
The house that Monster Squad was born in, pretty much.
That's right. Yeah.
It's funny.
I learned about that like years later, and I was just like, "Oh shit, that's Matt Kadi," and then like, sure enough, I'm like, "Ah, sweet."
I actually looked up that house recently because it had gotten sold. So like a 39-year-old, I look at Zillows and Redfins and all those stupid real estate websites for fun.
Yeah.
Old. And it was a trip because they had current photographs of that house. We lived there from my freshman year, so like 96 until I think 03, maybe 02, I don't remember. But no, 03, yeah, because it was when Monster Squad started touring, it was 03. But that bedroom now is, it's redone, it's got fresh drywall, it looks pretty, the windows aren't single pane broken glass like when we lived there. It was really it was just a trip to see that room. That was my bedroom. It was the spare like family room, like guest room. So that bedroom went to the backyard and it went to the garage. Okay. And there was sliding doors, and that was the kitchen, because it was a 3-bedroom house with 3 kids. So at some point I moved out of one of the bedrooms into the extra family room, basically, right, so that my brother and sister can have their own bedroom. So it was great because I had this big ass room. I mean, I had my drum set up in there. I had a giant couch, queen size bed, a desk, my record player, posters up the wazoo. But yeah, that's where they shot that thing. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, hey, it's I'm really stoked to hear about like all this, stuff with like the bands that you've been in, and what inspired you to get into photography. Wanted to move on to a couple of the last questions that I tend to ask everyone. The first one is, who are some bands that you think people should have on their radar right now?
So thankfully you gave me a heads up on this, because I would have gone completely blank right now. I'm just going to go down a list that I kind of wrote. Oh, also, sorry, let's back up a little teeny bit. I did want to kind of plug, if you will, on the tip of photography and art, things like that. A couple folks that have pretty much like just dedicated themselves to, I don't say like managing, but promoting punk art and making it accessible to people in the world. There's 2 folks named Farida and Craig Vincent. The company's called Destroy Art Inc. I guess since this is about some of my photography, I can just go, well, hey, you can buy some of my prints on there, which is cool and all. And it's a really weird confidence booster, and like, oh, cool, people appreciate your art. But also it's bringing lots of attention to lots of legends who, could always get extra attention or brought into like the newer, younger world of underground art and punk. Edward Culver, photographer, Winston Smith, of course. So anyway, whatever it's worth, probably the most random spot to throw out a shout out to Destroy Art, but if you're looking for cool art, there you go. Okay, sorry for that.
That's all right. Yeah.
Tangent.
I'll add the links to everything, like with
sure, cool,
the video.
But so bands, okay, here's the list. Okay, Screaming Fists from Oakland, well, and now Sacramento, because I hear one of those members might have moved around the corner from me. Yep. Cinderblock from Boston, some old friends. Newer band, Lumpen, Lumpen, from Barcelona, by way, I believe, of Colombia, but they all live in Barcelona. The other cool thing is, we had met one of these guys when Monster Squad was out there on tour. I forget where, I think in Paris. Super rad and really cool to hear, like, oh, we never thought you'd see you guys, and here you are, kind of situation. Always very flattering to hear. And then when they're super nice, and then when they go, hey, check out my band, and holy shit, their band fucking rips. Just, yeah, noisy, fast type stuff. The kind of band that should play at Manic Relapse in Oakland for sure. Kind of in the vein of Confuse. Anyway, Lumpen, great. Sectarian Bloom, which is from Oakland. Another great kind of post-punk style band. Otzi as well, of course, duh. Sacramento, Las Pulgas. Super freaking good. However, I think they may have disbanded. So that's very sad. Very, very politically active band. Definitely don't preach and don't do anything about it, which I can always appreciate. Never really been in hyper like politically motivated bands, but of course it's always an undertone, as it should be. So when people show up to protests and raise money for things and donate time to whatever they can, and it's in their lyrics, always have to represent that. Phil from Monster Squad has a new band called Love, Luv, which is great. It's like that short D-beat, fast Swedish hardcore type stuff that I was like, oh man, Phil, this would have been great to play with a band with you and do these things. Dorsey, who plays in Beatles Airplanes, is playing bass in that band too.
I've heard some of the songs. It's badass.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's just brutal, heavy stuff. Yeah, it's awesome. Jay Zone, this hip hop guy from New York, has an LP called Fish and Grits that I got. This is probably a little bit older, 5, 6 or so years ago. But one of the songs that always sticks out to me is he's definitely like one of those, he wants to call out phony rappers. So the short version of that is go back to selling weed. Say no more. Anyway, that album rips. J-Zone, Fish and Grits, Shit Coffins from the Bay, Burial Order from Sacramento. Honestly, not because you're here, but the Middle-Aged Queers 10-inch, fucking solid. I mean, I bought a t-shirt, got the patch, stickers on my wall. Like that album is so damn good. And it's also flattering too, because Sean like rocks a Holehog shirt, which I was like, oh, you're like, that rules, because I'm also wearing your Middle-Aged Queers shirt and I wear it all the time. It's my favorite long sleeve. Rooftops, acoustic-y type stuff from Boston. Rufio, he's played in a bunch of the bands out from the Boston area, the Unseens, the Global Threat, blah blah blah, more and more and more. But that's his like solo thing. He's got a solid LP out that he put out called We Just Pretend This Is a War. And then since we're on the Boston tip, Brian Lothian from A Global Threat, he's the singer, is a fucking writing machine, and there would not be a record pressing plant in the world that could keep up with putting out his EPs if he was so crazy enough to actually try and release all his songs on vinyl. Just records all the stuff in his basement, and it's so goddamn good. One of those can't call it a project, it's his stuff, it's his music. Like, pretty sure he plays and records everything. But one of those things you like, oh, I just want all this on vinyl. But also, you and I know it's not a cheap thing to just blast out all these records. So, right. And also on that tip, thank you for putting out the Beatles Airplanes record with us many, many moons ago.
Oh yeah,
many, many moons ago. I still am very, very. I think we are very proud of that album, and we knew you were taking a big risk on us, and yeah, so thank you for that.
Dude, honestly, I absolutely love that record from top to bottom. I'm
thanks, man.
I hope that people will grab it, and and they'll love it, and it's available. I mean,
it's a sleeper. It's it's still sleeping. It's waiting for that one kid who never would have thought, and now he runs a big label, and he's going to repress it, and our copies are going to be worth at least $25 at that point.
Right. No, dude. I mean,
no, I'm kidding.
I'm stoked to have been a part of it. I think it's a really great record. I think you guys. You guys are a great band. I mean, I know that you guys aren't necessarily officially done, but
never will be. I think. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole other album, 80% done, or well, maybe not that much, but there's a Dropbox folder filled with 14 songs just sitting there. Like, all right, well, whenever you guys are down to get together, kind of situation. And yeah, that was my first time recording with Jack Shirley too, which was really cool. Which is a whole nother conversation. We found ourselves playing a show with Comadre and Loma Prieta up in Seattle, and started picking his brain, and like, yeah, you're the guy for the next thing. We want to go somewhere new, but yeah.
Jack's great
for sure.
But
that's my list.
That's a great list.
Yeah.
I'll definitely check out as many of those bands as I possibly can, if not all of them. I'd love for you to send that to me, actually, so I can.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say,
yeah,
I typed it out on an Apple Note.
Ooh, nice. Fancy. But thank you for that. And I hope people will check those bands out. And the last question I really have for you at this point is, I like to throw this out to everyone because I'm always genuinely curious. Mm-hmm. If you could only listen to 5 records for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Oh, I hate this question.
I know,
it's extremely difficult. So, Filth Blatz split. I would say more. The shit split, yeah. Primarily the Filth side. However, I've grown more in love with the Blatt side as I've gotten older. I liked it when I was younger. I never disliked it, but the Filth side overpowered it for me. But man, when I hear the scream in, I forget, it's like, what do they put in your drink, Chuck? Or one of the, I don't know. It like boost pimples, Anyway, I can't figure out which Dead Kennedys record. My gut wants to go to Fresh Fruit because that was the first album shown to me by Miss Brasher. But Plastic it is a better record. It was, from what I understand, the one that they pretty much all wrote together, or more so wrote together. But as an adult, Frankenchrist has become my new favorite go-to record. I still mostly skip over At My Job, the synth-ish style track number 9. But I'm gonna, God damn it, I'm gonna go with Plastic for its diverse music style. More diverse than Frankenchrist? I don't know. I don't skip over any of the songs. That's the reason. There you go. Okay. I will skip over At My Job. The tracks called At My Job sometimes. I always call like Frankenchrist. You're aging into punk when Frankenchrist becomes your new favorite Dead Kennedys record. Not that it's ever been a bad record. It's not. It's just not like the one that people typically like. The first record.
Right.
I actually have 6, so I'm trying to figure out which one to get rid of.
All right.
Okay, let's go for a loop. Tony Allen, Afrobeat. He played drums for Fela. Tony Allen, The Source, which is a jazz record that came out, I think, maybe 5 years ago. I forget. But Tony Allen, The Source, Jesus Christ, that is a phenomenal like jazz Afrobeat type of album. And he is a drummer I wish I would have like discovered younger, because I would never ever say I'm remotely anything close to him, but his playing style and dynamics and weird drags and speed ups speak to me heavily. If I could throw that shit in a punk song, I would, tastefully, of course. Maybe just a little nugget, so that one. And then Jesus. So my last 3, and that puts me at 6.
You can do 6. That's fine.
All right. Okay. Anti-Schism, the whole collection, whole fucking thing. Just give me the whole goddamn CD of all their 7 inches and their 1 LP, 1 split. I would say just the Still Life, which is fantastic. The Still Life LP is not on that collection, which I've always found very interesting. So I will take 75 minutes straight of Anti-Schism every fucking day. Goddamn, I love that band. Pink Floyd, Metal.
Okay.
Fucking love that album. I got to balance things out, hence the Tony Allen input and Pink Floyd. I mean, One of These Days, the opening track on that, god damn it, that's a motherfucker right there. That's such a hot jammer. Obviously Echoes. Anyway, also they've got a bunch of dogs barking on that record. They're just sitting around a campfire. Let's record some dogs, put them on the album. And last one, I don't know which Subhumans album. Of course, I'm torn between EPLP. Let's count that out. Nope, no EPLP. That's the easy go-to, because that's a lot of times the first record, or The Day the Country Died someone gets into, I think. I'm going to go The Day the Country Died. My other option was From the Cradle to the Grave, but if I'm stuck on an island, I don't want to be reminded. Well, it's nothing positive out of either album. I don't want to be reminded that I'm just, going from the cradle to the grave. I'm fucking stuck on an island. What am I going to do? So I would say The Day the Country Died, but maybe The Day the Country Died is how I ended up on an island. So either way, I'm fucked.
I mean, maybe a heavy dose reality might be good for you every day.
Yeah. The Day the Country Died has a few more like upbeat songs that spark some happiness. So let's go that. Subhumans, final answer, Day the Country Died. And I'm just going to list off my alternates real quick.
Okay, let's do it.
Dredge, El Cielo.
Okay, that's a great album. Yeah.
Actually, that one should be high up on the list. Honestly, that's a fucking banger. Nirvana In Utero.
Okay.
Los Crudos Split. Couldn't figure out which Rush album.
I was waiting for you to say a Rush album because I know how much you love them. So
yeah, I fucking love Rush, but I couldn't figure out which one, so I left it out. And Bristol's Pogo Till You Puke, which is actually a 7-inch Jersey punk band from the 90s. Black Fork, Rot for Loot, Lookout Records. Still fucking amazing album. And Green Day Kerplunk, solid record. Yep.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. That's great. I mean, it's funny, like so many people I know hate Rush.
Yeah. It's because they have bad taste in music, probably.
Well, see, and that's what I think. And it's like I don't know where you lost your taste in music, but I mean that's fine,
Well, they probably hate Dead Kennedys too. So I love Rush. I love Dead Kennedys.
Yeah.
I love.
They probably hate Pink Floyd.
But I like Mars Volta. You know what I mean? Like these are all these high pitch, nasally type folks. Like they're kind of in the vein of like you love them or you just really don't like them. Bands. Right. There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground with Rush. I learned that really, really young.
Yeah.
We grew up in a Rush household, and there's no middle ground with that band.
Yeah,
You know.
I know people that really just kind of clunk them in with like basically sounding like an overhyped garage band, you know, is
Oh,
like what a lot of
yeah.
people tend to say. And I'm just like, well, I mean, why is that so bad? You know, I mean, they're really good at what they do. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Totally.
Like, I fucking love
Mm-hmm.
Rush, and I'm Team
Mm-hmm.
Rush all day. But
Yep. First
that's
show
why
I
we're
saw them,
friends. So
I saw them with the Melvins at the Cow Palace.
hold
The
on, the
Melvins,
Melvins open for Rush.
the Melvins opened for Rush, the
Oh
Cow
man.
Palace in, I'm just gonna say 94. It was right before we moved to Vacaville. We lived on Treasure Island.
Oh
And
wow.
it might have been 93, but yeah, I was 11 or 12, I forget, but it was right, pretty sure before we moved to Vacaville. And I remember being on my dad, that dad had gotten floor seats on the, we weren't too far from them. And I remember seeing King Buzzo's hair. I was like a little kid. I was like, that guy looks so cool.
Yeah.
And then to see him later on, I saw him at a small club in Sacramento like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've seen him a few times. I'm not like a huge Melvins fan. I think they're awesome, but I'm not like, I wouldn't call myself a Melvins fan. Yeah. But man, the show was always so fucking good. It was surreal to have him like walk by me, and I photographed that show in Sacramento. I was like, God damn! I was 12 years old when I first saw this person, and here he is in a small. It was just really cool to like, kind of.
Anyway, it is kind of a trip to see bands on like a big arena stage, and then at some point, maybe later, because I've had this same experience where I've seen bands in like these huge arenas, either as the opening band or even sometimes as like one of the main acts. And then years and years later, you catch them at like Slim's or the Great American Music Hall.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, like, I mean, the magic's there. It's different. But it's just different. Like it feels different, you know? And yeah, like, dude, the Melvins, I'm with you. Like, I wouldn't necessarily call myself like a huge fan of theirs at all, but I'm definitely now a believer, having seen them several times.
Oh yeah. I get it. I get the obsession. I just haven't, it's only so much time in the day. I have a stack of records sitting next to me that I have not got to listen to yet. So.
Yeah, I was in a band for years with this guy who his name's James, and he's the biggest Melvins fan I think you'll ever find. Like there's two bands he holds above all others, the Melvins and Aerosmith, and he'll talk at length about both of them with like the highest degree of like enthusiasm, and it's awesome to talk to him about it, because he's like a kid in a candy store. It's just like, dude, the fucking Melvins and like fucking Aerosmith, and it's just exciting to get excited with him about this kind of stuff because he cares about it so much. And for years, I had no idea what he was talking about with the Melvins, because I just don't listen to him. I just don't. I'm glad you like them, and then like years and years later, I finally got a chance to see him in San Francisco. And I was like, okay, I'm going to find out what the Melvins are all about. And sure enough, man, I was just like, holy shit, this is awesome.
That's fun.
So,
yep.
Yeah.
That live show will do it, man. And on the Aerosmith tip, I've been a long time fan of many of their up. Toys in the Attic still rocks it just fucking Jesus Christ. And first album too. But anyway, live show stuff does it. OCs are a great example of that. When I first moved to SF, some folks I was working with at the Vans store would always show me OC. This is 2008, 2009. It's like, it's just kind of boring. Like recordings are just not that good. I just didn't get it. And then fast forward, I know we have to cut this off here soon, but fast forward to a couple of years later, I ended up setting up a show with them at Gilman with Off, and Ty Segall opened up. And I had heard the OCs, and I went and saw them at that show. It was a show I booked, and I was like, holy fuck. Like, I get it now. And, let's just say they have a lot of my money from the records I bought. So anyway, the live shows will do it, man. Bring it live, always.
Totally. Yeah.
So cool.
I miss them dearly, and I cannot wait to go to another live show again.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too.
Well, hopefully I'll be able to see Holehog before too long. I mean, that would be great, because I know that you guys really haven't even played any shows, but you guys did put out a record. It's called Radiation Blues, and it's out on Charged Records. So if anyone wants to pick that up, you should go and pick that up. It's available on Bandcamp through like just Holehog Punks with an x.bandcamp.com. I'll add the links to everything. But not to mention, Monster Squad has a bunch of stuff available through their Bandcamp. Build Us Airplanes you can get from Sell the Heart Records, and Great Apes as well has stuff available through Records or Bandcamp, etc. And then Destroy Art.
DestroyArt.com. Right. Destroy Art Inc. Just look up Destroy Art.
I'll have the links. Yeah.
It'd be easy, but
and you can pick up your photography. And Matt, it's been a pleasure having you on the
Thanks,
show,
man.
man. Always great to catch up
Likewise.
with you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Means a lot.
Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.